Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 10, Episode 13 of our weekly Q&A content, I'll call it, because it's both a video and a podcast. Our numbers suggest that most of you are on YouTube right now, but if you're on YouTube, you can check out the links in the description to access this on a lot of major podcasting platforms, which gives you the advantage of being able to download it and listen to it offline or sort of like, you know, on Bluetooth in your car or something like that.
Right.
And also often do something else simultaneously on the same device. Right. So if you want to listen to this as a podcast while you're playing Injustice, but you only have your phone, there's a good chance that you'll be able to do that as long as your phone sort of has the juice for it. And a lot of sort of games and other sort of time, I'm not going to call them time wasters, but a lot of other sort of activities that maybe don't take 100% of your focus will let you listen to podcasts at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Which is how I personally would listen to this if I was listening.
If you were listening to this,
yeah.
Which we're not.
How I listen to this is I sit here in this chair and I speak like half the time.
And you feel the vibrations through your bone into your brain.
That's true. I listen to myself speaking, but then sometimes I get to listen to you speaking. That's like a if you think about it, a conversation is like a little choose your own podcast.
That's a funny way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so do we have, you probably want to talk about what we're looking at if you're watching the video.
So I'm actually, one of the sort of a meta comment is I'm really enjoying, and I've said this a few times, but I want to keep on saying it because I'm really enjoying even the second time around of using all the challenge characters in the weeks that they're around. And I'm just discovering so many interesting things that you don't pick up until you've played a bunch. And this is, I think, the bigger even meta point is that this is why hackers are so bad at making teams if they haven't hacked their stats to be way in excess of what's possible. Because when you are grinding for stuff and it doesn't come fast and it doesn't come easy, then you spend a bunch of time using characters because they happen to be characters you have.
Yeah.
And this is sort of an artificial forced way of doing it where I'm playing with, you know, every character every week. But you don't pick up on these things about the character. So Bounty Hunter Lobo, for example, even from last week when we did the recap, and I was talking about how we were going into the numbers about how much of his special 2 damage was in the first of 4 hits and how much you could lose because it wasn't ranged enough to be able to hit the opponent. So the interesting thing that I've been doing, because I've been playing with him more and more, and you're going to see some footage of this, is that if you start hitting the special 2 button immediately after doing your swipe, 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 and don't, like, it's easy to get carried away because, at least on our phone, not every touch registers. Yeah. So if you swiped only once, there's a chance that you would get no swipes at all. And so you swipe a bunch, and usually you wait, at least I did, I'd wait until I see the animation finish before planning to do the next thing. Don't. Finish swiping, then I'm smashing the special 2 button, like rapid tapping it as fast as I can. And I'm actually getting the first hit of his special 2 more often than not.
Okay.
Because it triggers fast enough that the opponent has been pushed back by the shotgun blast.
Okay.
Like they're not, you know, that sort of that last little bit they've hit and then they get pushed a little bit further.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is, so I'm hitting them. And I feel like I'm hitting them way faster than I was before. And they haven't even had a chance to really finish taking the hit. They're blocking some of the time.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Like, how is that possible when the stagger animation hasn't even happened?
Right. It hasn't even, like, if I wasn't taking a swing at them, they would stagger further back.
Yeah. But somehow they're stopping, like, mid.
Right.
Sort of stagger, yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird. So I'm getting more play out of Bounty Hunter Lobo, and I've also, I mean, this is the logistics part of it. I'm also playing with next week's character, Arkham Killer Croc.
Yeah.
And so what I'm discovering, so there's, all right, so this is the other funny part. So usually I spend about a week with each character.
Yeah.
The first few games, I'm noticing a few things. The next few games, I'm refining it. And if I keep on playing for the end of the week, I realize that there's just some other things now that I've refined the strategy.
Yeah.
That as I play that strategy, that has its own little sort of quirks, which is interesting. And Arkham Killer Croc is really interesting because his Special 2 does not enough damage. It's reduced for having the bleed damage. But I can't tell whether the bleed damage is just so high to make up for the damage. So it just, instead of doing the full damage that he should for his attack stat, he does half of it immediately in the special and the other half as bleed damage. Or maybe it's because, you know, sometimes you leverage the Master's Death card as you tag in to get the extra bleed, but his bleed damage is pretty good. It feels like it's almost as good as Arkham Knight Catwoman's.
Yeah.
But it's still not enough, because then you run into the same problem that you do with the high damage newer characters, challenge characters, where the special 2 only the last can knock them out. And Arkham Killer Croc has almost the same problem. His last hit won't knock them out, but the bleed will bring it down to 1. And so they're just standing there. So not only do you not get your power back, they're not really knocked out. You still have to do something to trigger them.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I'm actually playing with Arkham Killer Croc. So this is the other problem with Arkham Killer Croc. Because his passive gives him that, not a shield, but whatever that armor is. So every time he tags in and every time he does a special, he gets more armor. He is the perfect counter to Raven, because she swaps health, but his armor's still there. So he could have almost full health and let her swap away. But he's too darn tanky. He's too darn hardy. So you know how normally Arkham Knight Batgirl, you want on your team because she has this devastating drop-in stun, you boost your stun damage, and she will knock the crap out of the other team.
Yeah.
She doesn't get a chance to do that because he's just not getting knocked out fast enough. And so this is the problem with an Arkham Knight team using Hawkgirl, is you don't want to bring in your Astro Harness person because you want to save the invulnerability. So if you bring in Batgirl, though, you end up she's more vulnerable and more fragile than Arkham Killer Croc. And so unless you adjust your strategy a little bit and have the third character who's not Arkham Knight Batgirl come in, but who is potentially not that useful, you're not getting the benefit of Arkham Knight Batgirl. She's getting knocked out before Arkham Killer Croc. So it's interesting. I'll show you'll see on Thursday when you see the team what the solution is, and it's sort of a funny and sort of not so funny solution that when you try to, instead of having Arkham Killer Croc as on the best Arkham team, and you have Arkham Killer Croc acting as the best damager on your team, then it's not actually useful to have a full Arkham team with him. It's interesting.
Okay.
Love playing all these characters now.
Yeah. And I want to just give a quick shout out to what I'm playing. I started playing recently. Just that because I think it's really fun and it's worth playing. It's a game called Metal Hellsinger. And it is like a mix between kind of like Doom 2016 as a game. So like a first person shooter that's pretty visceral and fast paced and aggressive. And specifically the thing that sort of is the easiest way of tying it to Doom is that you've got a relatively small arsenal of guns that are really finely tuned to feel pretty good. Yeah. And the one mechanic is that when people are low health, they stagger, and you can hit a button for, it's called a glory kill in Doom. I forget what it's called in Metal Hellsinger. It's like an execution or something, or like a sacrifice or whatever.
Fatality.
And so you press a button, it gives you a really quick animation, and then goodies spill out of them. So in Metal Hellsinger,
like a pinata. They're like pinata.
In Metal Hellsinger, that's health. And so in Doom, that was health, and then sometimes like ammo and other stuff, depending on how you did it. I don't remember exactly. I think it was mostly health in Doom also. Okay. But the sort of second thing is, if it was just trying to be Doom 2016, it wouldn't be nearly as good. But the second thing is that it's got an adaptive music soundtrack that ups tempo. The tempo stays exactly the same, but ups in sort of intensity the better you're doing. And everything you're doing is to the beat, and so you get rewarded for doing things on beat, and
like
so
Beat Saber.
Yeah, so you build up your combo meter higher. I think you do more damage, you get more points, and it's like a high score based game. Right. And so it doesn't seem very long. I've only played it for a couple hours, and I think I'm like at least halfway through it if the level level menu is right, and they're just relatively short, but it's got great sort of music for what it is. I'm not like a fan of metal, but I think for like a intense sort of fast paced, like not like hyper violent, but like violent kind of game, right? I think metal is like a great sort of accompanying music, and it really makes you kind of sink into the beat, where like I do better when I'm actually bobbing my head in real life because I'm clicking on beat, and so I want to get my sort of like if the rhythm is in my whole body, then it feels a lot more natural instead of just like, you know, isolating it to the click. So it makes you feel and sort of pulse your focus a little bit with the rhythm too. And when it like all clicks together, it's really, really cool and satisfying in a way that like Doom was a ton of fun. Yeah. But this game makes you kind of sink that like one like half step deeper into sort of the rhythm of it in a way that can be really satisfying and relatively unique. And I should say that there's another game that is very similar, basically sort of the same premise of music-based FPS called Bullets Per Minute, and I've played that too, and I quite enjoyed that game, and I had sort of a similar experience in some moments with that, but I'm liking Metal Hellsinger even a little more. So it's a recommendation for that game, and if you've already played and liked Bullets Per Minute, it is like an even stronger recommendation. And if you like either, you have sort of a new mini genre, micro genre. As far as I know, there's only 2 entries in the FPS rhythm game whole sphere, but they're both pretty great. Okay.
So what you just said reminded me of the other thing that was going on this week.
Yeah?
So you know how I always say that I don't play games, really?
Yeah.
And I haven't played many games, mobile or console or computer.
Yeah.
And who knew that what would draw me in would be infinitesimal small amounts of monetary value.
Yeah.
So AliExpress, you know AliExpress. So for those who don't, it's just like some Chinese-based retailer. Like it's there's little individual people who sell on AliExpress as a platform for their little whatever stuff.
Yeah, because Alibaba is like a logistics manager, right? That lets people connect to manufacturers in China. And then AliExpress is like a cut out the middleman for the consumer, where you can buy straight from sort of manufacturers in China. Or at least that's what they say. Whether or not there's middlemen involved in AliExpress, I guess depends. I'm sure there are some, but like it's meant to be sort of like a direct. If you see something online, if you see like an ad that looks like a scam, there's a really good chance that the way that scam works is that you buy that item from like their store for like $20 for like and $15 shipping, and they buy it for $3 from AliExpress and ship it to you.
Drop ship it,
So it's not always great quality stuff, but it is like unbelievably cheap. Like it's so cheap that you almost have to come to terms with the fact that like that your current model for how much labor deserves to be paid and like shipping and everything, like it seems impossible that like anybody at any step of it is making any significant money from it. And so you have to ask like, how is it even getting this cheap?
Right, exactly. Like there's no child that will work that cheap to make that piece of good.
Yeah.
So so the funny thing is they have this system. So a lot of retail companies, retail sites, they have those loyalty programs, right? And so that the more you spend or whatever, you can use points to get discounts. And AliExpress is no different. They have this thing called coins.
Yeah.
Just literally coins. And you can collect coins by doing things like checking in every day. And you can accumulate points so you can get discount off goods.
Yeah.
And one of those ways you can do it is by playing one of their 2 games. One is a Candy Crush ripoff. And the other is a logistical game where you're creating things in your factory and improving your store and filling orders. But it's time limited, so you can't just play. You have to like recharge things.
It would be really funny if it was like Ender's Game and you're actually running a real storefront in China.
That'd be funny.
Like autonomously.
So I've actually been finding myself playing it a lot. And it's neat because it's self-limited. But there's a compulsion because of how you refill your ability over time. But I think you max out in about 2 hours.
Yeah.
So 2 hours is not enough time to sleep. And it's encourages you to just come back and try to do these things.
Yeah.
And maybe the wild thing is, though, sometimes you can buy power-ups so that you can play faster, or you can buy more stuff that's in the game.
Yeah.
And some of it is that game's currency, but some of it is the actual coins. The only reason I started playing it in the first place.
So you're spending the sort of benefit. I wonder what they get out of it.
Well, I'm not spending the benefit.
But some people would be.
Right.
I wonder what they get out of it. Are you being served ads while you play?
Not that I notice. If there are any, I'm tuning them out. I don't think so. I don't think there are any ads.
So my question is, what is the benefit for them?
Keeping you on the site.
It's creating an ecosystem that keeps them front of mind.
So there's a recharge. So there's a way that once you've run out of your energy that you're supposed to be using, you can not exactly watch an ad, but you can browse the store.
Oh.
So for 15 seconds, if you browse for 15 seconds, you get these charge ups. And there's a limit to the number of charge ups you can get per day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all right, so the funny thing is on top of that, like that's sort of scratching the surface. The funnier part is when you look at the discounts. So if you've been on AliExpress, you know that anything that you want to buy, there's multiple sellers selling it.
Yeah.
And the discount you can get by using coins is, often like a small arbitrary amount, like 5%, 10% at the most that I've seen. But that same good, and maybe it's a different quality, but I can buy the exact same thing from a different seller on AliExpress for less. Mm-hmm. For less than I would get with the discount. That's what I'm saying. The value of the coins is infinitesimal.
Yeah.
And it's not even like, maybe there's a difference in quality.
Yeah. But it's impossible to know.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't judge online. They're often all using the same pictures even.
Yeah. That's the thing, is that for those products, they are often good enough quality and very, very rarely good quality.
Right.
So the problem is that what you're buying is probably going to be like serviceable but mediocre. And sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's like half broken by the time it gets to you. And that's where sort of the deal comes in. Like you'll want like an aux output splitter.
Yeah.
And it'll be like 10 cents per unit.
Yeah.
And so the cheapest you can find it on Amazon is like $5. And so you can buy 20, but then like 70% of them are broken. From the moment you get them.
So what's wild to me though is that the times that I had trouble with product, AliExpress is like ridiculously responsive. So if you have to pay attention. If a package doesn't come and you don't dispute it soon enough and it passes the window, your fault, you're done. Mm-hmm. But the times where something didn't match the picture, and I could still use it, but I wasn't, happy with it, you dispute it. You can either ask for full refund, or you can ask and return it, or you can ask for a partial refund. And every time I've asked for a partial refund for the amount I thought was fair, they just immediately approve it.
That's pretty good. Yeah, especially when increasingly there are these platforms that have such bad customer support that is like so intrinsically frustrating to everybody. You know what's a terrible customer support platform? Uber. There's a lot of platforms like Uber and like Airbnb and other stuff like that, where you get really limited interaction. You're interacting with people that are like outsourced labor that clearly have incredibly limited tools for actually supporting you.
Yeah.
And you only really are going to interface with them when something's gone wrong,
right?
And you're in a bad mood. With like Airbnb, it's like Airbnb, it's like your shelter is messed up, right?
Yeah.
And with Uber, your food is messed up, and both of those are tough, right? Because most of the time, people,
there's an urgent need. You can't just wait.
You don't book an Airbnb as a backup, right? You don't have a second place to sleep. Right. So when something bad happens at an Airbnb, you're like, oh God, where am I going to sleep tonight?
Right.
And most of the time people order food when they are either already hungry or expecting to be hungry very soon.
Right.
And so by the time the Uber order has been screwed up, you are like, I am hungry. And people get pissy when they're hungry, right? Hangry is like a term for a reason.
It's a made up term, but it's a real thing.
Well, kind of everything's a made up term, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's used enough that now it's just a real term.
That's true. It was an advertising thing, right? It was which ad was it? Who did it? Was it like some chocolate bar?
Oh, I don't know. Isn't Snickers "You're not you when you're hungry"? But is that hangry? Did they coin the term hangry?
Somebody did. Somebody tell us in the comments.
Well, I don't know. Coca-Cola coined like modern Santa. So at some point, I almost don't even care that much.
And I should point out, somebody who has joined us for today's video and podcast is CB, our cat.
Yeah.
But he's being ridiculously quiet.
Yeah, so you can't even hear him. Yeah. But yeah, so though that like with Uber, like it's impossible to contact support, and sometimes they'll just say, yeah, whatever. Or with Airbnb, they'll be like, yeah, nothing we can do. And so it's
tough patootie.
And what's also funny is that the unit cost for each interaction with those platforms, right, each like purchase, is relatively high, especially with Airbnb.
Yeah.
So it's really funny that for a platform that you might literally be spending like $2 on, that they have good customer support.
It's amazing. Like, seriously, I was really surprised. I was always, whenever I buy something from China, and there's that, you're separated by the potential weeks and maybe months of delivery time. I always feel like I can only spend an amount that I figured that I could be willing to throw away.
Yeah.
Like, if
it's like early eBay, right? Where you have to sort of understand that there's a decent chance that you never get anything, and you have to be okay with that. Or Kickstarter. If you're not going to be okay with not getting it, then you're in the wrong place.
Right. Yeah, it's a gamble.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's amazing to me that it scales the opposite. Like it's an inverse kind of relationship where it gets so cheap that they can offer you like really good customer support.
Yeah.
So that's what it took. So these coins are probably of no value because if I ever want to buy something that has a coin discount, it'll still cost more than one without a coin discount.
Yeah.
And I'm just playing it relatively, I mean, it's only been a week, but I'm playing it relatively obsessively to the point where, and maybe part of the challenge is figuring out what it is because the documentation and the instructions are not very good.
Yeah.
So I'm finding myself making bad mistakes and realizing it afterwards, but then I don't make the same mistake again.
So maybe this is going to be an Injustice and AliExpress logistics game channel.
Yeah, because the logistics game is more fun than the Candy Crush. Because if I really wanted Candy Crush, I just play Candy Crush.
They sort of have that pretty down pat.
And I stopped playing Candy. Like I used to play pretty obsessively too when but now it's not.
There are like apparently a small cohort of like often retired people.
Right.
Who have played like every single Candy Crush level.
Oh, have they? Is it
and then
a finite number of levels?
There's a finite number of levels, but it's like 5,000 or something like that.
Wow.
Like there's a finite but massive number of levels, and there's a small cohort of people that need to wait for new levels to come out. And they come out like either every month or every couple months or whatever. And so there's a group of sort of elite Candy Crush users who have reached the end of what seems like an endless content mill. And it turns out that it's not endless. It's just vast.
So is it like the idea way back when that people could read every book that had ever been published before they started, really publishing a lot of stuff?
Yeah.
And now it's just not possible because you just can't get caught up. Like if you started now, I doubt you. Like would there be even some levels are harder than others, and some levels just aren't possible to do like really quickly. Like sometimes you just got to get really lucky.
Yeah. So okay, apparently Candy Crush Saga currently holds 15,185 levels on the HTML5 version. There's 90 more levels and 6 more episodes on the Windows 10 app version, but some players have more levels to play due to the testing. Flash version, on the other hand, has 2,825 levels. And so there's apparently 15,000 levels approximately. And I can't even imagine. That's like that's a really titanic accomplishment. Whenever people are like, young people are gamers, and then people go, well, technically like the median age is this, because when you count like mobile games and Candy Crush, anybody who's played through all 15,000 levels of Candy Crush is a hardcore gamer on a level that I almost can't even comprehend. Like it's just been one very specific game.
I feel like there should I know, like Injustice, right? I feel like there should be a joke there about how they have to be that old because they've had to play that many years of, but it's
just
not,
Candy Crush.
Just Candy, but it hasn't even been around that long. They just are able to make a commitment, and I don't know if I'd want to play Candy Crush like that or whether I'd want to try to get all the badges in Injustice. I guess it's clear. Like I just don't
like. You mean the first place one?
First, second, third.
Yeah.
Because there's still every once in a while there's still a new background or a new I don't know I can't remember what the other term was. But
title or something
like that. Well, there's background, title, and then another one.
What's the third one that you're thinking about?
I could probably look it up right now.
Image, like profile image or something. Like that little like icon.
Yeah, maybe it's the icon. I can't remember
whatever
the term.
Yeah. So do we want to answer the
we
first
should answer
question?
a few questions because most of them are going to be pretty quick.
We can
like
do
some injustice to tie it tighter.
So Mark Amona 6317 says 2 different accounts on the same WBID, or sorry, red flag emoji, 2 different accounts on the same WBID. Hello, I don't know if you'd be able to help me, but I have 2 accounts on the same WBID on Apple. It had me make a brand new account a couple years ago. When I signed into my WBID on Android without the Android backup, my old account backed up from years ago, before the weekly challenges and gears were a thing. But when I sign into iOS, it doesn't let me get access to that old account. Is there anything I can do? Different accounts, and then it says Marcitos and Marky Gains on the same account, but I want to transfer my old account to iOS.
You cannot. This is an easy question. So we know that Apple and Android are on different servers.
Yeah.
So it will let you register that name on both devices, both operating systems, but none of the content transfers over.
So for sort of the injustice on the server side, they're reading the iOS and Android as 2 totally different walled gardens, right?
Yes.
Like you have one account and the other account. So iOS Injustice and Android Injustice aren't the same game on their servers. They're not stored sort of in one place. So unfortunately, you have 2 accounts, 2 totally separate instances
that just happen to have the same name.
Yeah, tied to the same WBID. Yeah. So there we go.
We got another.
Yeah, we'll do another one, which is Daniel K. Limick 4867, and they say the talk about you guys on the leaderboard reminds me of the time I versed Devlin 16's Flashpoint team online. They're probably the second most famous person I've ever, quote, met.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so who is the most famous person you've ever met, do you think?
John Stewart, probably.
Oh, that's a good story.
Yeah.
So how much do you remember about that?
I remember we were at Disney. Was it Land or World? It's the one
We've
in
never
Florida.
been to Land. Yeah, Disney World.
So we were at Disney as a family.
Yeah.
And you...
this is the good part. This is my favorite
part. You were like, hey,
that's John Stewart.
That's John Stewart.
I can say that part. Yeah. Hey, that's John Stewart.
Yeah. And then my mom was like, that's not John Stewart. He doesn't look like that. You know, look at that. Like, he's got like that scraggly beard and whatever. That can't be him. And then she's like, oh my God.
Wait, it is John Stewart.
I think it is John Stewart.
And we found out afterwards, reading one of the tabloids, that he was there for, I think, his daughter's birthday.
Yeah.
And he was checking stuff out.
And it's a good thing because we did not see him with his daughter because we probably wouldn't have went up and said hi to him.
Right.
We saw him talking to like an employee outside like one of the rides or something.
Right.
So he was not a captive audience either. It would have been more uncomfortable if we were like right behind him in a line, I think. You might have wanted to say something, but the other problem is that
he's stuck with you.
Yeah, then you're stuck for 45 minutes. And I imagine that at least sometimes, if you're like a famous person and people recognize you sometimes, and you're like, I'm going to have to sit here for 45 minutes, and now I know they're a fan, so I have to be nice.
You have to be on. It's not even so much necessarily to me. The hard part isn't being nice. Nice is easy. Like if you're a decent person, I think being nice is easy. The hard part for me is being on.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you're yourself and you can just totally zone out. It's totally just be like not zero functioning as a social person, right?
Yeah. But so then we went up and you said hi, and then you asked if I could get a picture with him.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh yeah, sure. I'm always happy to take a picture with someone who's shorter than me."
Right, because you were young then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he was very nice. He took a nice sort of warm picture, and then that was the interaction. But that's probably the most famous person I've like met. Right? It was very brief.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Have I met anybody famous? Like, I don't really count.
Well,
John
you
Stewart
also met.
I also met John Stewart, but I think I'm trying to think. Is there anybody else that I might have met that was the same? Like, the funny thing is that the people that I meet that are quote unquote famous, they're very famous in a particular niche.
Yeah, well, because you go to like, and I've gone to like sci-fi, fantasy, like literary conventions.
Have we told the John Scalzi story? When, I mean, this is not going to, what do you call it? Let's dox ourselves because, you know, it's not like the convention's still running. But my favorite is, all right, so John Scalzi in the science fiction field, I think he's probably the best selling science fiction author, like current science fiction author right now. There might be other contenders, but, you know, he's actually got like millions of dollar contract with Tor to continue publishing his books. Yeah. So he's like one of those, you know, when people talk about how most writers are poor and it's only a handful of writers that are like superstars.
He's like the 1% of writers.
He is like, well, yeah, basically. So I took you to reading at a library that he did.
Yeah.
We got some books signed, said hi. Then we went to a convention, a local convention where he happened to be a guest.
Yeah.
We took some books. We said hi again.
Yeah.
And then when we went to Minneapolis
for NerdCon,
for the first of only 2 NerdCons, I think they were
Yeah.
intending it to be bigger, but we didn't go to the second. I don't even know if the second one happened because it wasn't nearly as profitable, I think, as they thought it would be.
Yeah.
And John Scalzi. So there was a bunch of famous people, right? Like there was Welcome to Night Vale.
Yeah. I was going to say that I've met both Cecil Baldwin, the voice of Cecil Baldwin, I don't know. The voice of Cecil, the main person in Welcome to Night Vale, and I've also met like Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Craner, both.
Right.
So like the main Welcome to Night Vale people, the 2 writers and the main actor.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, we the Welcome to Night Vale signing was happening at the same time as John Scalzi signing in the same room.
Yeah.
But separated, and they both had huge lineups.
Yeah.
So we couldn't. Somebody was saving our spot in the John Scalzi line when we went to the Welcome to Night Vale line. Did you get that poster signed? You did.
I did. Yeah.
You got to put that poster up somewhere.
I don't know where it is.
I know where it is.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, but anyway, so he remembered us as the Toronto.
So John
guys.
Scalzi looks up and says, "Hey, you're the guys from Toronto."
Yeah.
And I thought that was amazing because, listen, I don't expect him to know our names.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even expect him to necessarily recognize us, but it's so much more personal for him to say, "Hey, you're the guys from Toronto," while we're in Minneapolis, instead of saying, "Hey, don't I know you?"
Yeah, it was another level. I think the piece that you're missing maybe is that at the initial reading, you knew that he really liked, was it Diet Coke or Coke Zero?
Coke Zero.
And so before it, there was like a vending machine or something, or you brought a Coke Zero. We had some.
We decided. Listen, when you meet somebody and you want to just thank them for whatever joy they've given you, and you don't really have a relationship with them. At most, you have something like a parasocial kind of something, but you're grateful and you want to give them something back in return, right? So the typical thing is you meet them at a bar,
you buy them a drink. Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, buy him a drink. He drinks Coke Zero. Yeah. He loves Coke Zero. So I bought a 6-pack of Coke Zero.
Yeah.
Put it in with some ice packs in a cooler and brought it with us to the library.
Yeah. So
that when you were at the front of the line, you could hand him a Coke Zero that was cold.
But that wasn't actually how it went down. How it went down was he finished a Coke Zero in the middle of his like reading or whatever.
Yeah.
And we were sitting because we had gotten there like early enough to get relatively close to the front. We were sitting close. You're just like, hey. You just nudged me and handed it to me, and I just kind of, I was like a kid. I don't know how old I was, like 12 or something. I was small.
Would you have been 12? Were you even 12?
Or 10, whatever. I was small.
You would have been 10. I think you would have been 10.
Whatever age. It was like before I hit puberty, right?
Yeah.
So I was very clearly kid-sized, right?
Yeah.
Very clearly like small.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just scurried up there, like put the Coke on the table, like next to his other Coke, and then like a little ran back. And so I think that's part of maybe why he remembered is that he had a fresh cold Coke Zero sort of appear for him out of thin air from this little kid just running up to him at the thing. So I think that maybe made you a little more memorable as the guy who kept the Coke flowing for him.
But all right, so but what's interesting too is though that not only was there the separation, because a lot of times it's hard to recognize people out of context, especially if you don't know them really well. And then the next thing though is that you were clearly much older. Like NerdCon, you were post.
I had hit puberty. Yeah, I probably didn't look like the same kid.
You look like a different person.
So what I'm telling you is that he recognized you. He said guys from Toronto, but what he meant is that it was a man he recognized and somebody who clearly had to be his son. So unless there was a second son that for some reason only got invited to some events.
That's funny.
I think that's more of that's John Scalzi's sort of ability to put 2 and 2 together.
So I think that's probably the most famous interaction I've had with somebody that was more than just the kind that you can buy at, say, Comic-Con or something.
Yeah. So the people that we have had interactions with are mostly very nerdy, right? Like Patrick Rothfuss, we've been able to talk with him like a little bit, a couple times.
Yeah. No, it's definitely been interesting. Yeah, that's a cool story.
So there we go. And I guess that sort of bragging note of all the famous people that we've met, we can end it.
Yeah.
So to finish up, obviously high rollers like us don't need it. but we like to give a huge thank you to all of our lovely supporters.
And in case it's not clear, that is like a
joke,
a very, very lame kind of joke. Yeah, because we are. That's what made me think of it when Devlin 16. In some ways, I think Devlin 16 is more famous than us because that's the subreddit, right? Like, it's just more fundamental.
Well, the thing I would say is that for however uncool it is to have the only famous people you've ever interacted with be like authors, which I still think is cool. I still think they're really cool. I'm just saying I don't know if the average person would think it's as cool.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. It's very niche.
Yeah.
It's very niche, but I find this way cooler.
But if anything, we're a couple steps down from that.
That's right.
Where I'm glad for anybody who's like, oh, you're like a famous person that I'm interacting with. I find that awesome. I find that super cool. But I find it really surprising because I don't think that I would find us cool at all. Anyways, so we'd like to give a huge thank you to our patrons. That's Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, and Hoshi 127 on the accredited level. And the names that are scrolling past who have supported us at some point during the pandemic, which we may or may not be phasing out soon.
Yeah, because it's not, I guess at this point, really, technically, it's not a pandemic anymore. It's more of an epidemic, and it might just be at the level of... endemic. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that COVID's not around.
Right.
But we're no longer in sort of that, like, initial acute wave. The terminology changes, even if the severity doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like the flu can sometimes have, it's endemic, but sometimes there's epidemics.
Yeah.
And in my lifetime, I don't think there's been a flu pandemic, although it came close a couple times when we were worried about, I think, bird flu, and then there was a swine flu.
Yeah. But anyways,
yes.
The point is, thank you so much for your support, and thanks so much to all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.